Welcome to ExplainerCast, episode 30. I'm your host, Dave Smith.
And this is Shane Swenson.
And we have some explaining to do. Today, we are going to explain a very curious security problem. I guess you could say problem. Maybe a security surprise.
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely a surprise, which I think in security, surprise equals problem.
Yes, that's exactly right. This is our second time covering the famously secure app called Signal.
Yep.
Which is a end-to-end encrypted messaging platform that claims to be the most secure way in the world to communicate over the internet. Well, I don't know if they would make that claim, but it certainly is the most popular, most security-minded messaging app on the internet.
Yeah, and I think they have a justly earned reputation for being security forward and being more on the secure side. And the last time we talked about kind of this side channel attack where you could gain some surprising information kind of by taking advantage of the way that they use the network. And I think this one falls into a similar category where it's kind of an adjacent function that ends up exposing information that I think most Signal users would have thought was fully secured.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's worth a little recap in what we talked about last time.
Yep.
With what they exposed in the surprise, another security surprise.
Yes.
Surprise. Maybe I'll take a shot at explaining that for a moment, and then we'll fill in any gaps, and then we'll jump into what happened this time.
Perfect.
So, Signal is famous for allowing you to send messages to other people that cannot be intercepted or tampered with by anyone else except you and the person who receives it by virtue of what they call end-to-end encryption, industry term for the message is encrypted on your device before it leaves the device. And so there is never a point in time where an unencrypted message can be seen anywhere except on the device where it is sent from and received at.
Yeah, I would say from the account, though, because you can receive Signal messages onto any of your devices. But yes, from account to account. Yeah.
Fair. Okay, makes sense. And the encryption keys are on the devices where those accounts live.
Right.
So this there was a surprising thing where you could actually figure out someone's location down to the city level by simply sending them a friend request on Signal.
Yep.
And it was wild because all you had to do was send a request, and the result of that request was that the other person's device would do a HTTP request for your profile picture.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could then inspect the content distribution network caches around the world to see which caches had become warm by virtue of that other person's device doing a lookup of your profile picture. So all you had to do is upload a profile picture, brand new, send a friend request, and then go look at all these different caches. And that's public information, and now you know the city they're in.
Yeah, because you would basically see essentially like which server in that CDN or which node in that CDN the request went to, because it was going to make that copy and save it in the cache as part of responding to that request. So there was this observable change in the storage on the network that the recipient of that request would have no reason to ever know about or think existed, but yet the person who sent the request, who's now doing that lookup, can go make that observation.
Yeah, crazy. And so it all happens even without the knowledge of the person. The person's phone didn't even have to be unlocked.
Yep.
Didn't have to be awake. It could be sitting on your nightstand while you're sleeping, and next thing you know, an attacker figured out what city you're in.
Yeah, that's called a zero-click attack because there was no action taken to facilitate the attack on the receiver side.
Super wild, and very creative. And as I recall, it was a kid who came up with the attack.
I think so, yeah.
Incredible. That kid's going to have a very interesting career. Either in prison or doing great, interesting security work.
and sometimes a little bit of both. There is a bit of a... There's a history of that.
There is. There's been movies made about that.
That's right.
Anyway, so today Signal is back in the news.
Yeah.
But now not to do with profile pictures or content delivery networks, but a different kind of delivery network powered by Apple and Google.
Yep. Yeah, in this case, push notifications. And in reality, the last time too, I mean, it's quite possible that the way that all happened is you get the friend request and you're going to get a notification on your home screen about this friend request. And then I don't know if it was the notification process or clicking into the app that would then go and perform this fetch, this lookup. But in this case, specifically, the issue is that when you receive a message, you also get a notification on your notification system, like on the home screen or the lock screen. And there's an option for that notification to contain a preview of the message, of the content of the event you're being notified about. And that ended up being the key vulnerability in this case.
Yes, exactly. So Shane and I did a little research on this, and it turns out, so you've all done this, right? Where they've got a little push notification that shows up on your phone.
Yep.
And it turns out that push notification is delivered through a totally independent channel of whatever else your app does. In this case, Signal.
And I think this is the surprise right here.
Yes, surprise. And Signal, the whole claim to fame on Signal is that these messages that you send to the people you're messaging are encrypted all the time when they leave your device.
Yep.
But guess what? These push notifications are not.
Well, maybe to be more specific, they're encrypted with that shared secret key that the two end parties, you and the person you're exchanging communication with, have essentially through the Signal's encryption protocol negotiated. And so that they're always protected by your own keys and credentials. In this case, it turns out we don't think that's true here. And that's actually kind of crazy.
Yes, very surprising, actually. So when I say they're not encrypted, that's exactly what I meant, Shane. Thanks for clarifying. They are encrypted, but they're not encrypted by your key.
Yeah.
and then when they're delivered to the device, they're also not encrypted, and they are stored in persistent storage on the device. Now, there are some footnotes on this, some asterisks that we need to point out, which is that I believe this is only the case if you have turned on the notification preview feature,
right?
Where the phone actually shows you a preview, maybe just the first few lines of the message, which for short messages, it usually ends up being the whole message.
Mm-hmm.
That's what actually gets delivered and then stored on the phone.
That's right. Yeah, I don't think it sends all the content. And in another case where you can see this, we were talking about other situations where this two-path kind of surprising factor comes into play. Is like when you get I get like an email notification, and I do see the preview of that, but I go try to open the email and it's not there yet. And that's because there's actually a totally separate way that the email itself, or in the case of Signal, the actual Signal message to your app is delivered compared to the way that the notification is delivered to your phone. They use different channels. We'll talk about that. And they use, in both cases, I think they're encrypted, but they use different encryption schemes. And the notifications to your phone all share essentially your phone's just standard encryption, as opposed to like the Signal messages, the application itself adds another layer of encryption that it manages for you. And that's the layer that's missing in these notifications when we say that they're unencrypted.
And that layer, it should be said, is the main reason Signal exists.
Exactly. Yeah.
So to not have it on these push notifications feels like just expressing an opinion here, but it feels like a violation of the promise that Signal makes as an app.
Agreed. Yeah. And especially, a violation of kind of the expectations. And Dave, this goes to something else I've been thinking about, which is I think as a society, we actually have created a lot of situations and systems where there's a best way to interact with those systems, but it's not obvious. And we sort of kind of blame the user when they do normal things and it's not the best way to do it. And this is one of those examples where I think the system offers this convenience feature of, you want to see previews, but I don't know that it is properly qualified to say, and by the way, you should consider the previews to be entirely insecure.
Yeah.
So if you care about security, make sure you turn those off.
Yeah, like if you're using Signal because you want your messages end-to-end encrypted, then this feature is not for you.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so how do we know that this is the case? Well, I mean, it has been the case, and there's nothing new about this protocol, and it certainly hasn't changed the push notification protocol, but it came to get a lot of attention this week because the FBI was actually able to take a user's Signal messages and read them.
Yes.
Even though they were supposed to be end-to-end encrypted, the promise of Signal is that they are not readable by anyone except the end user. And that is just not the case. And that's because not only were they delivered not using Signals or not using the user's encryption key, but they were stored on the device as well.
Right.
Now, I can't comment on whether they were stored encrypted or unencrypted. Knowing Apple, by the way, it was an iPhone.
Yep.
But knowing Apple, they probably were stored encrypted, and they were stored somehow using some kind of user-specific encryption key. That's very common for Apple
Right.
to do that. Like that's how Keychain is done. That's another way. Like cookies are often stored that way from your browser on disk.
Yep.
In an encrypted cell in a database table. So they were probably encrypted in some way, but the FBI was able to get them. And I'm quite confident that if they had been encrypted using the Signal encryption mechanism, the FBI would not have been able to get them.
Right.
Otherwise, they would have just gotten them that way.
Right. And yeah, we don't know enough to say exactly how they were encrypted in transit, but it would appear that they were stored, maybe in a log or maybe in a push notification database or something like that that's on the phone. And I would guess, as you said, Dave, that was encrypted essentially with the phone's like device or user level encryption key, which the FBI, clearly had a way to unlock the phone or to otherwise gain access to this type of data. But there's nothing in the documents that I've read that indicate that they successfully overcame the Signal protocol itself in terms of that encryption. It seems rather this maybe less secure push notification system itself is as far as they got. Because the other thing they mentioned was they were able to retrieve inbound messages, which of course generate notifications, but they were not able to retrieve any outbound messages, which would have generated notifications for the recipient, but not for the target in this particular case.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that's what, that's another good clue that they really did use the push notification database to get these messages. So they got one half of the conversation, I guess.
Yeah. So maybe Dave, should we go into a little bit of detail? Because I think, and this is why I said this was a surprise, I think we typically expect that all the data associated with a particular application is sort of traversing like the same basic path in the network, like it's using the same communication mechanism. And this is one of, I think, the surprising factors is that these notifications essentially take a different path. And you and I have experienced other scenarios. You mentioned when we were talking earlier about airplane Wi-Fi sometimes allows notifications, but not content. We've also mentioned and seen like in a low signal environment, cellular environment where you had like one bar, you might get notifications, but then struggle to actually open and see the content that notification is referring to.
Yeah.
So let's kind of break down, how does a mobile app, first of all, just get its usual application data, and then how do notifications vary from that?
Yeah, great way to break it down. There are indeed two channels, at least two, but like let's set aside push notifications for the moment and just do what you said. We'll just talk about exactly what a mobile app does. And I don't know, let's use like another example. You've brought up email. You could think of messaging apps like Slack or Signal or Telegram. And then you could even think of things like web browsers or even a game that you want to play.
Yep.
And they're generally almost all of these are going to follow a pattern that if you squint at it, they all look the same.
Yep.
And the pattern goes something like app starts up and it makes an HTTP request to some API endpoint that powers the server side of the app. So for like an email client, it's going to reach out and do like depending on the client, it'll be like a different protocol, but it'll reach out and request all the emails, which ironically, I think these days they're probably all using HTTP for this.
Yeah.
Even though there are specific email protocols like IMAP and POP for this purpose, but I'm going to guess that like almost all email clients are now using HTTP to fetch email from a server.
Yep.
I know that's not true if you set it up that way, but like the Gmail app undoubtedly does this.
I think I just saw, I didn't even pay attention. I think I saw, was it maybe Google was deprecating like one of these more email specific services even like recently.
Like IMAP or POP.
Yeah. As everything moves to the web, right?
Yeah, exactly. Everything that exists long enough to become HTTP or die.
Yeah.
That's like the two outcomes.
Is that Dave's law of internet applications?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So when you open your app, it then makes these HTTP requests to go get the data to then show you on the screen.
Yep.
And yes, it might use WebSockets to receive push notifications. So not all asynchronous data comes through this other channel, this push notification channel.
Right.
Sorry, when I just said push notifications, what I meant was like asynchronous updates, like something happened on the server side and you need to be notified.
Yeah.
That could come in through other mechanisms, but that's all separate from the push notification system.
Right.
The push notification system itself is a completely segmented Apple-operated system.
Or Google-operated for Android.
Yes. Good call out. I often forget about our friends with the green
They
bubbles.
exist too.
Our green bubble friends. who Apple likes to bully.
Seriously. Who knew that color could be bullying, by the way, but it totally is.
Green and blue.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yes, Apple and Google operate completely different server infrastructure that application developers can use to send push notifications to users' devices. And the way that they have like onboard operating system level APIs where apps can register to say like, I want to receive push notifications for this channel. And I'm sure they have all kinds of interesting security to make sure that the right notifications go to the right places.
Yep.
And that you don't get notifications for apps you don't have installed and things of that nature. But the channel that those push notifications are delivered is in no way operated by the app developer. And that's the important thing here.
Yeah, well, we should say there's two sides to it. The app developers, I think, server resources are generating the request to make a notification.
Yes.
But the way it's delivered to your device, agreed, is provided by the device provider, not by the app provider, which is a distinction from the way the app gets the rest of its data, as you mentioned.
Exactly. So like if you're an app developer and you're working on the server side of your app and you want to send a push notification to your user's app, you send an API request to Apple or to Google.
Yep.
And then they take it from there and deliver the message to the phone.
Exactly. And there's good reasons for this. The push notification system being this way, it lets the device provider have a very consistent way, like they all kind of look similar on screen.
Mm-hmm.
It also allows for like battery savings because you're making one network request back to say the Apple server to go get all the push notifications for that device, as opposed to your apps where every single one of them is making its own network requests. And all of that does consume additional resources.
That's right. And you imagine like a typical phone these days probably has well over 100 apps on it.
Yeah.
And almost every app on planet Earth loves to send you push notifications. So imagine if they all had to have a persistent internet connection open all the time in case a notification is ready.
Which is exactly how it would work on your desktop computer, by the way. Like that's the app.
That is how it works.
That's the architecture we have.
Yeah.
But mobile,
That's right.
mobile just forced it to be more really power, I think, like battery power optimized is probably where this started.
That's right. And Apple and Google both designed their push notification protocol to be very light on battery. So that was in the design. But what's really interesting now, so think about Signal. Let's figure out like how exactly this must have come to be. On Signal, there are servers involved. So maybe this might be a misconception, but Signal is end-to-end encrypted, but that doesn't mean that there's not servers between you and the people you chat with on Signal.
Right.
What makes it secure is not the absence of servers between you. What makes it secure is that your app encrypts messages before they go through those servers. So the servers are just passing along what looks like gobbledygook to them.
Yep.
Ciphertext that they cannot understand or read or intercept or tamper with. But in the case of the push notification system, let's talk about how this would work. So let's say I'm sending Shane a message on my Signal app.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to send Shane a signal, and so what that's going to do is it's going to encrypt my. Let's say the message says "Hello Shane." On my phone, the message "Hello Shane" is going to get encrypted into ciphertext, and then sent over to Signal server. But somehow, if Shane is set up to receive notifications and see previews in the notifications of the message, somehow that message "Hello Shane" must get in clear text to Apple.
Yeah.
Now, how that happens exactly, I don't know. I don't know Signal's internal architecture, but one way that it could happen is that they send it to a Signal API and then Signal forwards it to Apple unencrypted in like preview form.
Right.
So somehow someone on the Signal team decided to pass unencrypted messages to an Apple or Google server.
This has me questioning a lot of things, Dave. I'm wishing I looked at this a little more carefully, because this is actually pretty crazy. Yeah, we should probably finish talking about like the normal path. Like you talked about how you encrypt it on your phone, and Signal. Maybe we have a separate conversation and another time about the encryption itself, because it's actually pretty cool.
Yeah,
there's a whole system called public key infrastructure that allows, or public key encryption that allows like you to have a shared secret with someone, even though you're using open communication channels to arrive at that secret.
Yeah,
but through mathematical magic that works for now, that's done. And so the idea is end-to-end encryption, meaning the sending device encrypts, and no matter who kind of carries that encrypted message along, it, as you said, it's opaque to them until it reaches the destination device where they have the shared secret. that was arrived through, again, public key encryption, and they can decrypt it and they can see the content. And so when that's working right, no servers in the middle are supposed to be able to see the content of the message. The Signal protocol does give you a couple of options for how you deliver messages and how you validate where they came from. And the default is that the sender and the receiver identities are known on the Signal server, so they can deliver to the right place, and so they can validate that this is actually a contact you want to receive messages from. They do have a method to even anonymously send, where you sort of just like drop the message off on the front door, and then they deliver it to the receiver, who then validates that they want to receive from you. But in any case, they have to know at least that much, like who the receiver is. But the content, like a message preview, should be totally opaque.
Yeah.
So this, to me, sounds like all the way at the sending phone, at the sending device, assuming this is phone to phone, which is the default mode for these applications. You sent the encrypted, fully encrypted message via the standard Signal protocol, but also would have had to provide at least that preview
Yep.
from the originating device into Signal's server.
Yes. Surprise.
Yeah,
Which means it had to come from the phone unencrypted.
I think so. Because like Signal server can't decrypt this. They're not supposed to be able to, at least.
Well, yeah, they better not be able to.
So they shouldn't be able to generate the preview there. Like it had to be generated on the sending device,
That's right.
sent to their server, and then forwarded.
And they send it to Apple or Google.
Exactly. Yeah. Then forwarded to the phone, essentially manufacturers, or really the phone OS providers, who this is why this
Yes.
is Google for Android and Apple for iOS, who then, has some authentication and so forth, and then routes it via that push notification channel to the recipient, where it is then displayed on screen and apparently stored in a database or something.
Yep.
So yeah, the fact that that message preview took this entirely separate route, where I think every step of the way in transit, you could say it was encrypted, but it was not encrypted by the Signal protocol, the Signal encryption itself. I find that shocking.
Yeah, the whole reason that Signal
Yeah.
exists. Yeah, me too. This is like way worse, in my opinion, than the CDN geolocation hack.
Yeah, this is like, I don't know, make a silly analogy. Like I'm gonna send you like a secret message, so I like wrap it in multiple envelopes and duct tape, and I seal the whole thing up and tamper proof, everything. I put my wax seal on it, but then I also like tape a postcard to it and say, oh, by the way,
With a preview.
here's the first page. Yeah, like well.
So funny. This makes me actually want to test this now and turn on my notifications
Just to see.
and see. Yes.
And then do a network sniff on it and like see if you can see what you
Oh.
can see outbound and inbound. This is wild.
It is wild. In fact, Shane, I just sent you a Signal message.
Oh, dear.
I'm curious to see.
Well, it's a good thing I'm not trying to hide from anybody, because I see a preview.
You saw a preview of the message?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, this isn't this always the way it goes in security? This gets past so many people. No one thinks, yep, I just saw Shane just replied, I got yours. And I see the preview.
Yeah.
And I know that came from Apple.
I mean, unless now there's a chance like the knight in shining armor comes in and says, but wait, you're wrong. The push notification didn't contain the content. We did some super duper dark magic and
Yes.
got the app to go decrypt it for us locally. Like there's a get out of this thing, but it's
Yes.
super complicated. And so I put it in the unlikely category until
Yeah.
we quick go search and find out.
I'm glad you called that out, because if I was designing this, and frankly, the Signal engineers are very skilled, very smart
Yeah.
people, and very transparent about this. There is a very good chance that the push notifications we're talking about here, God, I don't know how this could be true, given that the FBI was able to recover the messages from the push notification database.
So
But
the way this could work, let's give them a lot of credit. If you had to design a fix for this that got most of the way there, you would end-to-end encrypt the content for the notification as well.
yep,
But then you would be relying on iOS having a hook that says when I receive a notification
from Signal,
from Signal or any app, I pass it to the registered app
yes,
for interpretation.
yeah, and then please render this. Like, tell me what I should show on the screen,
Exactly. And so that like the app gets a chance to decrypt it and then hand it back.
and then it gets stored in the database.
It gets stored in the database. So this is the part where the contract then was violated, was like, oh, actually, then we persisted it.
Yeah. So, but really, that is a much better story than we sent a side channel, the postcard on the outside of the duct tape package.
Yeah.
Right. That's a much better story than that, where we believe that they may have sent literally a clear text message preview to Apple.
So now I'm wondering which is more probable, the clearly more complicated method that would be more secure, or the like simpler one that is like shockingly insecure?
Well, there is also a third option.
Okay.
Let's not get stuck in the false dichotomy. The third option is that there's two more options, both of which involve incompetence or misdirection. So law enforcement and intelligence agencies are famous for making things up about how they got information.
Okay, fair enough.
So what if they didn't actually get the information, like in this case, as the FBI reports they did? What if they got it through some other means, but they're reporting it this way?
They're protecting methods. Okay.
Yes, that's one option. The other option is that, look, this came through some kind of journalism. And it could be that the journalist misinterpreted the FBI's report.
They munged it.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And I guess that's a fair point. And I don't know if you and I have talked about this rule for life, but anytime you're close enough to an event to know what really happened and understand it, and then you read about it in the press, you realize there's a 0% chance they get all the details right. It just never happens.
Yeah. And I am doing a little live research here, and it does say that, because it literally asks, are Signal's push notifications encrypted?
Uh-huh.
And people online, these are just random internet people, are saying that yes, all that the preview contains is to say you've got a notification, and the Signal app itself is displaying stuff. But this doesn't sound right to me, because
I don't know if I believe it.
yeah, my Signal app's not even running right now. I quit the app, and my notification came through with a preview, and so I'm like, I don't see how it would have had a chance to do that.
Right.
Unless, like what you said, unless what you said is true, that there actually is a complicated little hook system here.
Yeah. The other thing that I think that's a little bit weird, so let's talk about these other cases where you can observe something similar. And one example is on flights where they have the free messaging Wi-Fi, but they want you to pay extra or register extra now to get access to like full content.
Yeah.
And so I've certainly experienced this where I'll get emails will come through and show up on my screen for a push notification, including, I think, a content preview. But if I click into it, I don't actually have the email on the phone.
Yeah. Like you try to open your app and it just goes into a spinner.
Right.
And can't load the email.
So it feels like there's content that came with the notification. Now, whether that content needed the app to, whether there was a step where the app got to, in this case of Signal, decrypt that content using your end-to-end encryption system, is kind of the remaining question in that. But I almost feel like it doesn't seem super likely from a system design standpoint.
Yes, actually, it looks like that is exactly what happened. At least in Apple's case, they have what's called pushing background updates to your app. Deliver notifications that wake your app and update it in the background. Now, it doesn't explicitly say that you can change the app can then decide what's rendered on the screen.
It could work.
So I tell you what, Shane, I'm gonna go on the record and say I'm gonna trust that no one at Signal decided to send a clear text preview of a message ever.
Okay.
Whether to Apple or any other intermediary, because I think that would just be really inconsistent with their whole means. What I do think is very likely, though, is that once the preview was rendered on the device, it was indeed stored in persistent storage without using the encryption of the Signal user's key.
Yeah, so once it opened the envelope in this pathway, once the envelope was opened, then the resulting content was stored for some period of time, which was long enough for it to be recovered in this case.
And that to me is perfectly plausible. It is somewhat consistent with APIs that I see do exist for Apple, and it's consistent with Signal's own commitment to security, because I just can't believe they would have overlooked this one.
Right. Well, and it's like, you would have to, it feels like, you'd very much have to like hold your nose, and you would at least, I would think, be prompted to put significant warnings around the enablement of that setting. You see apps that will ask to enable settings. So like, I haven't done this, but I assume apps can kind of query some of the API setting or some of the device settings, because they can be like, oh, I want you to enable the following thing for me. I don't know if they can go the other direction, if they can tell like, oh, you have previews enabled. Maybe you really shouldn't. Yeah. And prompt users, but that would seem to be values aligned, to warn people about this as well.
Right. Totally. And sure enough, I just found it. There is indeed an API you can implement in your, at least on iOS.
Okay.
Called the Notification Service Extension, that allows you to modify the content of a remote push notification before it's delivered to the user.
Oh, nice. Okay, so that would be the method to use to do this then.
Yes, but then the OS stores that stores that message.
The modified thing. Yeah.
The modified thing, which in this case is the unencrypted message preview in a database. So
Yeah.
very clever that someone figured out how to get that.
And to be fair, so that I certainly, not that my opinion on this matters, but I feel better about that because I really didn't like the idea of this message traversing the whole network.
Yeah, for sure.
In this case, this is all an on-device operation at that point. And to be fair, Apple has generally had a pretty good reputation as difficult to gain access if you didn't want people to gain access to your device. I think the tools and techniques to gain access to Apple devices has improved over time to where I wouldn't put as much confidence in that as maybe a few years ago. But I could see that being
it's still probably among the best you can get, right?
Yeah. And as a result, like a reasonable compromise between being like user friendly and being secure. But if you want ultimate security of your Signal messages, this needs to be turned off.
Yep. Even if you delete your message history in Signal, if you got it as a push notification, it's still there. Diving a little deeper, looking at the source code, we think we've actually figured out exactly how this is working.
And I think, my initial hypothesis about this, where I was assuming that the notification was carrying the message and we sort of derived a bunch of things from that, I think that assumption was actually wrong, Dave.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing about Signal is a lot of the code is actually open source.
Yep.
Maybe all of it. I don't know.
Right. It turns out the notification payload for Signal messages, which I think is still different than what a lot of other apps do. In the Signal case, it looks like the notification essentially just says, hey, app, go check your messages. There's something new. And it doesn't actually include any of the content of those new messages themselves.
Yeah.
It's just a ping, basically.
And this is exactly what we would expect from a secure messaging app like Signal. So in other words, like another way to say that is Signal did not send any message content, whether encrypted or otherwise, to Apple or Google for the push notification.
Yeah, exactly. And so then, okay, so how does this get to your screen? Well, when that notification arrives, then the app actually reaches out to the Signal server to get the new messages. And from that, it can then choose in the app code itself whether to generate a notification saying you have new messages or maybe a badge count update that shows how many unread you have.
Mm-hmm.
Or it can, and it turns out by default, it actually will generate a preview that shows you who sent you the message and some of the content of that message.
And that is the default. So probably most people have that.
Yes. The default is for convenience here. And it's what people expect from most apps is that they see this preview. And this is then where the security issue kicked in because that preview was shown to the user. And now the iOS level setting, you have a setting that says when your screen is locked, do you show content previews or not? And then when your screen is unlocked, do you show content previews or not? At that point, that setting is now in control of what's done with this content thereafter. So if you've enabled the most convenient setting, which is show content previews even when my screen is locked, that message actually pops up on your lock screen, which is itself kind of concerning to me. And in fact, I have turned that one off. I don't want to see content previews when my phone is locked, but I do have the Signal default setting, which is that the content preview is present when the notification is shown. And that results in that content being stored in the notification database, which then is how this was eventually recovered by law enforcement.
Yeah, which is apparently available to the FBI through some means.
Yes.
And that really is the crux of this particular headline.
Exactly. Is yes. It turns out this data leaked outside of the Signal ecosystem via notifications, and at that point, it was not protected by their protections. It was protected by the more generic device and operating system protections, which were overcome in this case.
Yeah, which I'm imagining the way to overcome that. I don't want to speculate too much, but like once a phone is unlocked, or you have like the phone's, what do they call it? They call it a PIN code these days. What do they call it? Passcode?
Yeah, and now it could be biometric or other things.
Yeah, exactly. So. But essentially, the data, if it's encrypted at rest, that thing is the access to the key that decrypts that data. So whether it's your Face ID or your PIN code or whatever, so presumably they found some way to get into that.
Yeah,
I highly doubt that the FBI was able to just crack Apple's encryption at rest for that database, but who knows?
Right. Yeah, though I did see some security notifications. I forget when. That indicated that there were some vulnerabilities pretty deep in the Apple processing unit and the system on a chip that performs these operations. So there may be one or more pathways that that the FBA was able to use to get to this.
Yeah.
Anyway, the result is they did get to it.
Yep. That's the key.
That's the key. Yeah. And it wasn't a breach of call it the Signal end-to-end encryption protocol.
Right.
But it just shows how hard it is to secure these systems, because eventually you have to show the content to the user.
Right.
And at that point, again, it's at the two endpoints in a lot of these modern communication systems, because the middle is pretty secure, but it's on the two endpoints where one way or the other, either we reuse passwords because that's a simple way to get through our digital lives, or in this case, a convenience feature ended up being more weakly protected than the primary communication mechanism. And again, this is why it's hard to make a communication system truly secure.
Right. Because at the end of the day, it does have to go to someone's eyes.
That's right. Exactly. So then, from there, again, we tend to trust Apple, as a fairly secure vendor, but shows, even they had weaknesses here.
Yeah, they unintentionally.
Yep.
And this is fully within the control of the Signal app too. It's not like Apple forced them to render content previews in the push notifications.
Right. Though you could see the delicate balance between trying to attract and satisfy, maybe call it mass market customers, by having this setting be enabled with previews by default.
Yeah.
Versus, a security first approach would in fact be to disable those and give instructions with considerable caveats and warnings for how to enable them.
Yeah.
And just say, look, once you do this, you've lost control of that data. So make sure you trust the ecosystem.
Yeah, totally. And I'll just say, I think that the old mantra that there is no security without physical security is in play here. And so it would be a totally reasonable tenet for Signal to adopt, to say, look, once the message arrives to your phone and is stored on your phone, it's your responsibility to secure that phone, the hardware.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah, and to say, look, that's kind of on you. There's only so much that the app can do there.
We did our job.
Yep.
We got the message to you without tampering or anyone seeing it, and now it's on you. You could print it out, put it in a file folder in your cabinet,
Yeah.
But you got to secure that.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe that's just the way that this digital ecosystem has evolved is the phone or the personal device is such a concentrated source of critical information. It's more and more, it's your multi-factor authentication. It's the way you access all your accounts. So that's kind of become the digital key card to our lives, which I think has all kinds of implications that we probably haven't sorted through as individuals or society yet.
Totally. And I think the other big takeaway for me here is that if your goal is to protect against the general purpose mass security apparatus out there, where it's and I shouldn't say apparatus, there is a humongous ecosystem of bad actors who are just trolling the internet looking for data that they can take that they shouldn't have.
Mm-hmm.
If your goal is to protect against that, I still feel like Signal is very secure.
Yeah.
If, however, your goal is to protect against a government trying to get access to your specific data and they've targeted you individually, well, I'd just say good luck. I don't actually think. I think it's very, very hard to do that.
I think so too. And I think then there's the challenge there's probably a couple categories of people. There's people who know they're trying to protect themselves from government surveillance, and they're likely to hopefully be well informed about these things. But the thing that in this case, this person probably didn't know that they were trying to protect themselves from that till they got into a situation that was probably regrettable in hindsight.
So I think that the takeaway here is the only way to securely send a message on the internet is to not send a message on the internet.
Seriously. Yeah, security is hard.
Super hard.
And adding complexity makes it worse. I think that's the other takeaway is simple systems are more cumbersome but easier to understand. And when you add complexity, you create surprises.
Yeah, exactly. I think most security blunders in the world are side effects.
Yeah.
They were not deliberate choices. They were nth order, what's the right way? Derived.
Yep.
Secondary, tertiary effects.
Yep.
And I can attest to that for sure in my own experience.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Dave. Well, I think we kind of got to the bottom of this one.
Yeah, we did a little security forensics live.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks, Shane. We had some explaining to do. We did some explaining.
Indeed.
Did we explain everything we needed to explain?
I think so.
All right. Thanks, Shane.
Thank you, Dave.